Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 153, recorded on February 16th. The Cloud Pod gets the CloudFormation stage hook. Good evening, Ryan and Jonathan.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Justin.
Hey. Hello, hello. We're one more week without Peter, and then he's back next week. So if you're here just for Peter,
You're stuck with us. Yeah.
It's just the three of us. Stuck with us forever. Well, we have some interesting news this week to talk about once again, but it's only Wednesday, and I really do wish it was Friday. That's all I have to say about this week so far.
Yeah.
But as always, the cloud continues to be cloudy, and all its good things. So first up, let's talk about F5. Not the first company I think about when it comes to cloud, but I do think about big red boxes in my data center. F5 is announcing a new distributed cloud WAP, not that WAP, not the song. Everyone out of the dirt.
Nice.
Web application and API protection offering. The web application and API offering, known as WAP, combines capabilities from F5 solutions for web app firewall and distributed denial of service protection with API security from their recent Volterra acquisition and bot protection from their acquisition of Shape Security. Francois Locaux-Denou says that it's basically a bundled stack of all things you need to secure an application. For a lot of CIOs, securing the front door of the application is the number one issue. Of course, one of the advantages of this offering is that this is a SaaS cloud service that you can get subscribed to from F5, and that enables you to use the same WAP across all of your cloud providers, including AWS, GCP, Google, or even Oracle. Hey, you can get into the game with them as well. So if you like a single front door control panel to manage all of your DDoS and needs, this is not a bad solution if you don't like the native built-in cloud services.
I wonder if this is a sort of a play into the Akamai territory, really, because once they have this type of device available as a cloud service, they could very easily deploy this all over the world. They could very easily have edge caching and all kinds of things. They could really sort of take a chunk out of the CDN market.
Interesting. Yeah, you think about the edge story we have nowadays. I assume that I would assume that F5 is using cloud providers to partner with on this, because it wouldn't make sense for them to build out their own access points. But if they bought something like Cloudflare or bought some other CDN company, maybe that does get interesting. I hadn't really thought about that from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for them in a lot of use cases because of the sort of the deep integration with other services. Think about Amazon ALBs. They're aware of the instances which are up and down and the monitoring that goes into those behind the scenes. And so to have this kind of front door on services for either one cloud or multi-cloud deployments of their applications, I think you're still going to have to deploy those cloud native load balancing services as well, just to take care of managing the pool of resources behind that. So it's going to be a tough sell, I think, for a lot of people when they could use something like DNS round robin or something else to get this global traffic to different cloud providers, or routing, for example. So it's going to be a tough sell. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
Yeah, I think this is capitalizing on existing relationships, right? If you're, a hybrid solution in multiple places, and you already have a relationship with F5, you already have F5 as your data center, maybe you already have the management tier, you can leverage this and then add the security layer on top of it. And I think it's a symptom of what you see a lot of companies do, is trying to figure out their identity in the cloud space when they've been in data center for so long.
Yeah, it's funny because when I think of cloud, I don't think of private cloud. Private cloud to me is a data center. I don't call it the cloud, regardless of what VMware or HP or anybody else has to say. And so when they say multi-cloud, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's a hybrid model.
Yeah. Well, and I think if Akamai for a long time has had Kona, which is kind of their WAF solution in the cloud as well. So this, there's a couple things that are interesting with this. One is that it gets them into a SaaS subscription kind of model, which they were already starting to do with some of the cloud control panel stuff they were doing for Nginx. And this is kind of the next kind of evolution of that. So, as all hardware vendors kind of have to figure out, either they become somehow a partner of the cloud, like NetApp, or they have to, pivot into SaaS businesses or service businesses that they can provide as their capabilities of service. And this is what F5 is kind of taking this route instead. So it's an interesting choice, and I think it's the right choice for F5 personally. I don't know how the partnership with the cloud providers doesn't make sense when all of them have native load balancer technology that's integrated into their platforms. So I think overall it's a good choice. It's just a matter of does the market feel that way as well?
I'm sure there's an awful lot of people who are using F5 in data centers today with enormously complex TCL configurations. And they're thinking, we really want to move this to the cloud, but how do we re-engineer all this stuff? How do we re-implement all this business logic on the native services? I know it's something that's sort of crossed my desk in the past. And so if they can still support the full feature set that they used to support on-prem, then this is potentially a good move.
I mean, I think the reality is that most of these people who are data center people trying to figure that out, they just deploy a virtual F5 into their cloud, call it a day, which is terrible as well. I mean, it works for some ways, but it definitely, I don't get the impression that a lot of people who have a very complicated F5 don't just go to the default of, well, I'll just buy an F5 in the cloud, call it good.
Oh, I got to look down and see F5 deploying their appliances in multiple clouds for redundancy. It's like turtles all the way down.
Oh, yeah, interesting. We talked about Cloudflare a while ago and how they were adding edge compute, and we thought that was an interesting pivot for Cloudflare. To compete with cloud, everyone else's edge solutions on AWS and GCP, etc. And there was an announcement yesterday that Akamai is going to acquire Linode for $900 million. Now, this article says Linode is a competitor of AWS, but they were bought for $900 million. Let's just assume this is standard terms. Like typically it's three to four times multiple of your revenue. So that's maybe 150 to 250 million in revenue. I don't know that I would call that a competitor against $71 billion, but whatever. Well, they did call out AWS specifically in some of their press releases about this, so they do see this as something trying to bring compute capability to Akamai. The goal of the acquisition is to provide developers with a distributed platform for building, running, and securing next-generation applications, which of course would be edge applications. And Linode says there's no question that AWS is the big kahuna in the cloud. If you're an enterprise and need the ability to customize your infrastructure, AWS is a good fit. But if you are a small business owner or an independent developer, having access to all of that advanced cloud technology comes at a cost. Unnecessary complexity, risk of lock-in to Amazon's ecosystem, and frequent billing surprises. This to me feels like Akamai saw what Cloudflare was doing. It was like, we need to get us some of that. And this is a way we can get a lot of large-scale infrastructure expertise in our company and data centers and things like that from Linode. And we can get it for a pretty relatively low price. And do we continue to offer the VPS solution long-term? Maybe, if it leads to Akamai revenue. But also, we get all this compute capacity, so we just kick those customers off someday. Who knows? We'll see what happens long-term. But they do expect this to close in the summer, so about August timeframe.
Interesting. Comparing the revenues is interesting because I think Linode's annual revenue is about 1 day worth of AWS revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read the article and I was like, competitor. And so I went and started just playing around in their services on their product pages and stuff just to see what they were, just because I completely misunderstood, I think, Linode's business model from, I guess, advertisements that I've seen. I thought they were much more of a hosting agency, not so much as a provide your own API driven infrastructure. But they do have quite a bit of that. But that's it, right? Like they will host your site or they will give you a server. But there's a market for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely a VPS first, right? Focusing on WordPress and different things like that, and they kind of expanded just like DigitalOcean did to provide a development environment that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. It's really kind of the play that both DigitalOcean and Linode have is, you don't need to go use AWS for your dev stuff. Just use us, and we're just as good as they are for what you want to do. And Linode has Terraform providers. They've got all the standard bells and whistles that you would want in an infrastructure driven thing. So it's definitely interesting. I'm really curious to see what Akamai does, because Akamai is not a small and medium business company. They are an enterprise company. They sell to enterprises. And so, they're going to have to, they bought this for something. And again, I think it's to be competitive with Cloudflare's edge compute stuff. But what does that mean for Linode's legacy business? I mean, I'm sure they're not going to just throw it away because they just paid $900 million for it. And that would be a big write-off on their business. But I wonder if it becomes as much of a priority as it is today or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for the advertisement now. No concerns of locking with Linode. They only have 2 services. There's nothing to get locked into.
If I was a Linode customer, I may be taking a hard look at DigitalOcean right now, just to be careful. So, all right, let's move on to AWS, and they have announced the general availability of AWS CloudFormation hooks. a feature that allows customers to invoke custom logic to automate actions or inspect resource configurations prior to creating, updating, or deleting CloudFormation stack operations. AWS CloudFormation hooks will allow customers to validate resource properties and send a warning or prevent the provisioning operation for non-compliant resources to reduce security and compliance risk, lower operational overhead, and optimize your costs. Prior to this, you had to write all kinds of custom Terraform code or CloudFormation logic and controls, and enforcement mechanisms were not really great. So this now allows you to publish your policies, and CloudFormation hooks will now validate those policies via the CloudFormation registry and enforce them. So this is now the prevent side of infrastructure as code. So, which everyone else has sort of had for a little bit now.
Well,
I'm glad to see it here too.
Yeah. I'm happy to see, like, in this announcement that they talk about the warnings, because really the prevention is one thing, but really you have to complete the feedback cycle for someone who's deploying something that's out of compliance, right? And so if you don't have that ability to sort of discover that by executing your own CloudFormation stack and then getting a warning saying, hey, you're using the wrong SSL cipher, or this isn't one of the the standard instance types that we allow, how do you get that feedback in there so you can block it or you can remediate it after the fact? But I like that this is in line in front of the developer and not buried behind the scenes.
And there's a whole bunch of use cases, really. Thinking about things that we do today for our accounts, we let people deploy load balancing, for example, into their accounts, and we retroactively go back with another tool and make sure that logging is plumbed in the way it's supposed to be, and that the policies, the TLS policy is where it's supposed to be. With something like this, now we could discard that tool and we set a policy as a hook that either adds the configuration or rejects it if the configuration isn't present. So it's sort of a bit of attrition at all the other tooling we used to have to do to make the platform a success for our customers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't even discard the old tool. I just have a belt and suspenders sort of, method to it. So it's you want to prevent and you want to educate people that are using these things into your policies and the way you want it. But then you also sort of want that big hammer on the back end that makes sure that you're, communicating in a modern protocol and safe. Very nice. I like these kinds of announcements, and it's, the way they've implemented this, it's very extensible.
Yeah.
Like you can build your own, you can have, you can build your own hooks and publish it to the registry, and those hooks can do, pretty much anything you want.
Well, and if we had marketplace for CloudFormation, we could then, sell our pre-built ones. So we can make ones and then sell them.
Yeah.
Like
both Java and Python support, I think, is what they announced, which is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
I have to mention Terraform Enterprise Sentinel. This is probably a pain point that many people using CloudFormation and wanting to use the native cloud services felt, is that this was a huge gap in the security compliance model. So
yeah,
it's another box checked.
I mean, you still have to do CloudFormation, so I mean, there's that negativity to it. But yeah, other than that, you're right, Jonathan. It's great.
I've got past that now.
They made rollbacks faster right now. Like it's not so I had that one typo and it deploys all my stuff, and then I hits the typo and like the last till final step, and then blows up and rolls all the thing back. Yeah, those are good times. I don't miss those at all.
Yep. No. After years of therapy, which I'm still waiting for reimbursement for, thanks, Justin. I did get over the CloudFormation hate.
Well, if you have developers that you maybe don't like, and you want to prevent them from creating OWASP cross-site scripting, the Code Guru Reviewer now is adding a couple of new features for you. So of course, it still only supports Java and Python. I suspect we'll get a new language by the time we get to reinvent. And then they added secrets scanning and reinvent. So those are the three things you had before. And now you get a new detector library, which describes in detail the detectors that Code Guru Reviewer uses when looking for a possible defect, and includes code samples for both Java and Python. So when the developer says, this is bull, this finding, you can now give them how the detector detected it, and they can argue with Amazon about it instead, which I much prefer, because I don't want to argue with them about if the tool's right or not. But you argue with Amazon, who's smarter than I am. So that's perfect. And then the other one is a new security detector for detecting log injection flaws in Java and Python code, which is a direct reaction to Log4j. And so if you're using Code Guru Reviewer and you're using libraries and things that you're not sure if they're vulnerable or not, Code Guru Reviewer will tell you that you have bad Log4j configurations in your code somewhere, which is nice. I wish they'd had it back in December. But February is fine when no one cares about Log4j anymore, right? No one cares about that anymore. Is that where we're at now?
Yes. Yeah. Now the world has patched billions of servers. Now they're rolling out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing is, it sneaks in though, because it's like, you add another library to your application that you don't think, and then all of a sudden it has a Log4j vulnerability that you didn't know about. You're like, oh, it does come in more often than you realize, because there's so many integrations of Log4j and so much Java code out there that it can sneak in quickly in a jar file without you even knowing.
But yeah, absolutely. I've seen it pop up several times since, and it is kind of interesting. I think it is a little. I would be curious to see how they're actually detecting this, because I think there's so many ways to mitigate a lot of these things at this point too, where it's these things can be very hard to sort of like. There's the risk that's actually out there, but it's detecting the risk, and so just being able to call the remote executable isn't necessarily everything. So I don't know. It would be interesting to see. So, and I take offense. Some developers, like, you're talking about me, Justin. It's rude.
Only when you write Python code, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think what they're actually detecting in this is taking untrusted input from a particular source and logging it directly to the logger without doing any kind of matching or escaping of data and things like that. So it's not that they're looking for a vulnerability in the library as such as what you're doing with the data before you send it to the logger.
Okay, then that's awesome, because that's exactly the type of stuff of how this gets executed.
Yep, and I'm sure they do the same thing for. It's probably a copy and paste job from a different search for the same type of thing, whether it's passwords or SQL injection or anything else of the same type, where you accidentally trust your damn users to do the right thing.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Never trust users.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who use EFS, you're either in one of two camps. Either you're in I run an HPC workload and I wanted shared low latency storage for my HPC workload. Or you're like all the rest of us who were like, hey, it's shared NFS. We want that. And we all adopted it and then found out that it wasn't so great for that. So for the last year or so, they've been fixing the gap on EFS to give us actual NFS performance we want for servers to kind of meet both needs. But this announcement is definitely in the HPC land, in my opinion, as they're now giving you improved performance for your latency sensitive workloads that they can now run twice as fast as before. With EFS latency read operations, both data and the metadata were typically in the low single-digit milliseconds. Effective today, new and existing EFS file systems now provide average latency as low as 600 milliseconds for the majority of read operations on data and metadata. And this performance boost applies to one zone and standard general-purpose EFS file systems. So that doesn't mean you have to pay for the expensive stuff either, which is even nicer.
I mean, that's a nice announcement that they're just adding it to the existing service. I like that when it's improvements.
Yeah.
I assume this must be backed with something like very fast SSDs in one availability zone.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So it can't. Does it say is it possible to use multiple AZs, or is it limited to this type of performance for a single AZ? Because latency between more than one AZ would be pretty problematic for file locking and things.
Yeah, I didn't get that far through the article to see that. I don't see anything mentioned as I'm just scanning it real quickly here, but I don't think it's multi-region at this point, so it doesn't support some of those new replication features and some of those, because again, you have to replicate the data before you can provide it at a high capacity. But there are enough Rube Goldberg type machinations on EFS now between copying and things like that you could probably come up with a way to do it. It just might take you a little. There'll be an Amazon Solutions white paper that has like 400 Amazon services to make this simple use case work, so it'll be fine.
I thought you could only talk to EFS within your local region. While you can deploy a volume in multiple regions, your communication's all local, I thought. And so like all that.
Oh, I think the other region is read, if I recall. It's only read in the other region. But they have added new features.
Can you hit it though? Because I thought DNS trickery, I thought only returned your local region.
It's been a while since I've tried to do that, so I'm going to defer to the listeners who can write in and tell us what to do there. But my EFS use case is so simple that I don't even think about it. Like this, I'm going to benefit from this, and I'm not even going to care. Like the CloudPod website might be slightly faster today because of this. I actually don't know. I haven't tried because it uses an EFS backed container. So I don't know.
Nice.
All right. Amazon has new C6a instances. For those of you playing at home, this is not an Intel or Graviton. This is an AMD strip powered by the 3rd generation AMD EPYC processors for compute-intensive workloads. The new Ec2 C6a Instance are now available, providing up to 15% improvement in price performance versus the C5a instances and 10% lower than comparable x86-based instances. C6a Instance provide a 15% improvement in compute price performance, up to 40 gigabytes of EBS throughput and 50 gigabytes per second of network bandwidth. And the C6a also supports always-on memory encryption with AMD transparent single-key memory encryption, and supports the new AVX2 instructions for accelerated encryption and decryption algorithms, all available to you today. Just can't wow you with EPYC chips, can I?
Woo! Woo!
That's epic.
EPYC.
Don't just look at those bandwidths though for EBS.
Well, then for the listeners, I'm sorry to tell you, there's another EPYC story later in the show, and my co-host will be just as excited for that, and that's when as well, I'm sure.
Woo! Just practice it.
Seriously, don't you always wonder what, when you look at the network bandwidths for EBS versus networking? EBS is 40 gigabits, rest of network is 50 gigabits. That tells me there's 100 gig or 250 gig, whatever. I don't know. what happens to the other 10? Like, what are they doing with the other 10?
Yeah.
Why isn't it 50 for both? and I go down this path of trying to figure out, well, are they using the other 10 to like pre-cache things that they expect you to hit next? Like, is there some magic in the system there that makes it so low latency because they're using that bandwidth for some other purpose? Like, I want to know the details. I like knowing how it's made.
If I were to reverse engineer this with logic, which has no bearing on the technical implementation of this, the EBS is fronted through the Nitro card. So I suspect that because most instance types are shared on a server, that you cannot get, there's probably a very thick pipe into a Nitro card, but that has to be shared across other VMs. And if you were to look at the VM sizes and shapes that actually get the 50 gigabits per second, because it's not the small ones, that there's only probably 2 to 4 that would fit onto a bare metal C6A. And that you could probably logic that means that there's probably a 200 or 300 gigabit per second card in the Nitro that handles EBS connectivity. And that is why it's limited to 50 or 40. That's my guess. And then the network connectivity is via an attachment of a virtual NIC to the kernel, I think, or into the Nitro as well. But those are dedicated to the instance, and that is why you get more throughput. That's my guess. If I were to logic my way through this with no technical understanding of how any of the cloud works, that's my guess.
All right, I don't have a better guess, so just speculation.
My guess is a project guy or a product guy with his finger in the wind going, yeah, we could probably meet that SLA. And that's it. That's
Well, the reality is you probably can't get it anyways, even if you tried, because you had to have like some super highly optimized network IO pathing and data layout of the data to actually get to that level, because it's in some like super like those. Anytime they give those numbers, I'm always like a little skeptical. I'm like, yeah, is that the real world number I'm going to get? Because so much complexity in those things. All right. Well, again, we're going to talk about WAF again. Well, it was WAP earlier. Now it's back to WAF. With the AWS WAF, introducing AWS WAF fraud control for your account takeover prevention for protecting your login page against credential stuffing attacks. Stuffing attacks request where brute force attempts and other anomalous login activities are detected against your login page, and the account takeover prevention enables you to proactively stop account takeover attempts at the network edge. Account takeover prevention is offered through the AWS managed rules, and once added to your AWS WAF web ACL, it compares usernames and passwords submitted to your application to credentials that have been compromised elsewhere on the web. It also monitors for anomalous login attempts coming from bad actors by correlating requests seen over time to detect and mitigate attacks like irregular login patterns, brute force attempts, and credential stuffing. I do have to say, is this the AWS account page? Why do I have to secure my own AWS account page? Or is this like, this one's a little weird for me? And if this is the AWS account login page, why would I want this? No,
it's a WAF feature. You've tied WAP to your application. And so this is your login account.
So I am.
Yeah. So this is someone trying to break into the cloud
into the login page of the CloudPod. Okay, well, that makes more sense to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, the complexities of login pages, though, there's a lot there. So that's impressive that they can do that. Good for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're probably capitalizing on a lot of standard HTTP request libraries and looking at patterns. Like this smells a lot of machine learning and pattern recognition that they've applied there. And so if you get a bunch of coverage on those libraries, you could probably make a pretty good guess at what's going on.
I also have an optional JavaScript.
Yeah, in fact, they talk about coverage of the libraries. They talk about the SDKs they offer for JavaScript, and for Android, I expect they'll offer the same type of thing for what Apple use. I forget what it is now for iPhones. Programming language
Swift.
Swift.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I expect they'll offer the same type of libraries for Swift as well in the future. But the idea being that they're now collecting live metrics from your users as they try and log in to correlate with other potentially false login attempts, so you can differentiate between somebody who actually typed the password in incorrectly and then got it right the next try versus somebody who's repeatedly, deliberately going through a dictionary attack or something else. So it's kind of neat that they're sort of closing that loop really back to the user.
I'm going to turn this on the CloudPod later because we get not a lot of stuffing attempts, but people try to get potentially to do that. So why not? Let's give it a shot. we killed all the bots to our website with WAF, so it worked out really well for the bots. Maybe it'll work out for the stuffing too.
Yeah.
I think WordPress is just a huge target for anybody who runs it.
Yeah.
But it's so easy, Jonathan. It's so easy.
It is. Mm-hmm. It's like any SaaS service, whether it's the Atlassian products or WordPress, any popular product which gets deployed by millions of people is such a huge risk factor, I think, in my mind, because as soon as the vulnerability is there, that's an awful lot of people who have to patch immediately and have to be aware of the need to do it and have the ability to do it, who didn't contract somebody like Justin or Ryan to come along and do some work for them and don't really know how it works under the hood. So yeah, it's great to see a protection like this for people like that who wouldn't necessarily be able to respond quickly enough.
And speaking of protecting Atlassian workloads, like I turned on WAF and I was like, oh, this isn't, that visible. Oh no, just in passive mode, like the amount of hits I got for various things. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is very much out there.
I mean,
people will find it and they will try.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever take a laptop and that has no security patches on it, and you just put it on a network, it's publicly exposed to the internet, it'll be hacked within minutes. Like it's kind of crazy how bad it is actually out there. And this is why we always talk about when you get hacked, not if you get hacked.
Mm-hmm. Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the CloudPod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
All right. Well, the AWS Billing Console has a new shiny look. The new homepage experience provides an at-a-glance view of your AWS charges. The AWS Billing Console allows you to easily understand your AWS spend, view and pay invoices, manage billing preferences and tax settings, and access additional cloud financial management services. The Billing Console homepage helps finance, DevOps, or FinOps users quickly understand AWS spend and identify top drivers. And this is actually a console update that I don't hate completely. I mean, I don't like change first, so I hate it a little bit, but it's actually pretty good. I will grow to like it.
I've got a little FOMO.
I logged into 2 different accounts over the past few days, and I saw the Cost Explorer link had moved from where I usually found it, sort of halfway down the page to up to the top of the page. I was like, oh, there's new. I didn't notice any huge differences.
I mean, it's really the new dashboard. Like it gives you.
I wonder if maybe that's.
It gives you top cost drivers. It gives you, top spend by region. I mean, things that don't really work in a very large, like multi AWS account model for you. But, I didn't look at a large organizational billing centralized console to see what that one looked like. But overall, I think it answers some very quick questions like, what's my biggest cost? It gives you your top 5 costs really quickly. It compares your costs for the last 5 days to show you which costs were higher. So like I saw, 3 days ago, I had one cost spike up and I was able to see right there, it's because of my DNS names renewed. And so, I have like 4 or 5 that renew on the same day. And so I had a big charge that day. So there's definitely a lot of, just quick advantages to it, where before I had to go dig into Cost Explorer and go figure that out. And like, it would take a couple extra steps. So I do appreciate it's it's a little simpler. And anything that makes costing management simpler or quicker, I think, is a plus for many companies.
So if the network is monitored by the NOC, is finance monitored by the...
That's just what you say when you get the bill.
Yeah.
Nice.
Those FOC dashboards.
You know, as a member of the FinOps Foundation, I think you should submit that as an official term of your cost management monitoring team.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That'd make a funny T-shirt.
Yeah, it would. I'd buy that shirt. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll work that out for reInvent T-shirts.
We haven't done any merch in a while yet.
Yeah, maybe we'll work that out.
Yeah, we need to contract some artists to sort of prototype out some shirts. I think that's going to be funny.
Yeah.
If you're an artist who's listening to the show and you want to make a shirt, please contact Jonathan at thecloudpod.net. All right. And then our final AWS announcement, Migration Hub Refactor Spaces is now generally available, which is a new starting point for incremental app refactoring and help fast-track your refactoring efforts. Using Refactor Spaces, customers focus on refactoring their applications and not the creation and management of underlying infrastructure that makes refactoring possible. Refactor Spaces orchestrates AWS services across multiple accounts to create a refactor environment for incrementally evolving an application that helps customers realize their value earlier. Migration Hub Refactor Spaces simplifies refactoring by providing the following: reducing the time to set up the factoring environment, reduce the complexity of refactoring monoliths by iteratively extracting capabilities as new microservices and rewriting traffic from old to new using the Strangler Fig pattern, simplifying the management of existing apps and microservices as a single application with flexible routing control, isolation, and centralized management, and helping dev teams achieve and accelerate tech and deployment independence by simplifying development, management, and operations while apps are changing.
This is one of those things where I wish I knew how it worked, because this sounds very cool, but it also, I'm suspicious of it somehow, because most of the migrations, especially the successful ones, refactoring happened in two ways. One was a complete rewrite, or the other one was, sort of moving stuff over and then sort of over time slowly addressing it. And so I definitely see the need to create a tool like this, but I'm also sort of very skeptical of it providing functional value past a POC.
So, it's part of the Migration Hub, right? And it comes from this migration angle, but there is, if you think about a set of microservices and the routing logic that you put into all those things, there's a lot of a metadata console of your microservices architecture to kind of know where everything connects to, and a kind of visual layer. It's kind of providing you some of that logic, and then they're doing some of the heavy lifting of routing traffic to the different modules, different components as you go. I agree with you. I think it doesn't get very deep very quickly. It's sort of like using database migration service. Everyone talks about it, but no one actually does it because it doesn't actually work as well as they say it does. I think it's sort of the similar thing, but there is a use case where having this very simple routing services layer logic is actually a really cool feature. And why it's hidden into the Migration Hub, I don't fully understand, because I'm just make that available as a service that I can use if I'm refactoring or not refactoring, because being able to quickly and dynamically route things around and change things in my configuration at this level would be super nice.
Yeah, it's rudimentary tracing without instrumenting your code, right? That's... So there seems to be that would be a huge value just for the visualization of that alone.
I think in reality people would deploy hybrid models of legacy bloatware and microservices as they implement them, because the whole point of the Strangler Fig, if you've ever seen one of those trees, Google it, they're awesome looking trees. They have all these tentacles that kind of drop down, and I don't know, like something from a horror movie.
Huh.
Anyway,
I've never actually thought about where that came from. Now I have to look at it. Yeah.
But the process of the Strangler Fig is that you put a facade in front of the incoming traffic to your application, a request routing layer, and then to begin with, everything goes to the legacy app, and then slowly, as you break out little pieces of functionality into their own microservices, you adjust the routing layer so that you start forwarding the traffic to those microservices, so you can incrementally break out these huge applications into smaller and smaller components until you don't need the facade, or the facade just becomes DNS or an ALB or some other way of getting the traffic to the service that it needs to get to. And so it's a really good enablement for people who are staring at a massive application that's 20 years old, thinking, how on earth am I going to even start working on this process?
Yeah. and just kind of putting a facade.
That is where all migrations start.
Very true. This is a lot of work. That's how it starts.
Yeah. Oh man, what did I sign up for? Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's move on to GCP. An exciting feature for Vertex AI if you're into ML AI, which none of us are, so we'll try our best. They've offering you 2 new features, a new local mode to help you speed up your debugging process, and auto container packaging to simplify your job submissions. So debugging in a ML AI is apparently an inherently repetitive process with small code changes and small iterations. And Vertex AI training is a managed cloud environment that spins up VMs, loads dependencies, brings in data, executes codes, and tears down the cluster for you. Which, if you're trying to do a very small change and test it, is a lot of overhead. So now, using the new local mode to iterate and test your work locally on a small sample data set without waiting for the full cycle cloud thing, this is a friendly and fast way to debug your code. And by leveraging the environment consistency of containers, local mode lets users submit their code as local run with expectation it will be processed in a similar environment to the one executing a cloud job. And then the auto container packaging is available to you once you get your code right to make it ready for deployment at cloud scale. Auto container packaging simplifies the job submission process. Previously, you had to do 3 steps to build the container, to push the container, create a Cloud Vertex AI job, and now you can do it all with a single step command. Which, I mean, 3 to 1 is not super big optimization, but I guess MLAI people just want to go fast.
I mean, I equate, training a new model a lot like debugging a CI/CD pipeline or some sort of, code that you're using for infrastructure. It is very problematic to test that, because you have to, if you're debugging a CI/CD pipeline, right, you're committing your code, letting the pipeline run, waiting for that to get through whatever process before it dies. Training a model is very similar, right? You train a model, you run it, and then you get no data back. So it's like, so I think this is a huge enablement for those teams. So I like it quite a lot, especially when you're learning, like you're trying to not sound like such an idiot on the internet about AI. These things are very handy.
Definitely. All right, we're going Epic again, guys. Google Cloud is announcing the availability of C2D powered by the 3rd gen AMD Epic processors. The C2D instances take advantage of the processor architecture from the latest generation AMD Epic CPU, including the Zen 3 core, and C2D supports persistent disks, advanced networking, compact placement policies, and soon-to-follow sole tenant modes. Instances are configurable up to 112 vCPUs, or 56 cores, and 896 gigabytes of memory, and 3 terabytes of local SSD. They do not support confidential computing today, but they do say it is coming very soon, and so you can move all of your C1Ds to confidential computing soon with the C2D. So there you go, Epic, once again. So I didn't see which one announced theirs first. I don't know if AWS was first, then Google announced theirs, or they simultaneously dropped. I was sort of curious who beat who, but I just couldn't work it out in time.
Have to work with the kind folks at Vantage and build our instance decoder ring to that, so we can compare the instance types across all the major cloud hypervisors, so we can know which ones are the same ones.
It's actually very difficult to do that, and I will tell you why. So Google has standard shapes, and standard shapes in Google are fine. You can do just like you do with EC2 instances, but Google allows custom shapes. And so you can specify the exact number of CPUs you want, and then you can, based on the number of CPUs you choose, you get a certain allocation of memory that you can allocate with just part of the shape. And then they also offer you the ability to go into extended memory, which you can pay extra for. And so what happens is you get actually 3 numbers have to be added together to get to the cost of an instance. So it's the cost of the initial shape, the cost of the extended memory you allocated if you went over the baseline, and the OS license. And so it's not actually as easy to compare them as you would hope it would be, because there's all these gotchas to it.
I didn't think it was easy before you gave me all those details. Now it seems impossible. Challenge accepted.
Right? We need the strangler method for sure.
I will say, though, that when AWS announces general availability of an instance, I have never been unable to launch that instance to test it. And we often test these new things. We often benchmark new processors for database workloads, or Elasticsearch, or pick a workload. I've never failed to get an instance type assigned, in US West 2 or in Virginia, for example. And I can't say the same thing for workloads on GCP.
I mean, I've run into edge cases with Amazon where not in regions, but in specific AZs, I couldn't deploy like a newer instance type.
Yeah.
But that's, and that usually lasts about, 3 days. So,
yep. Yeah, you definitely run into that.
I mean, I've seen it on AWS with like really finicky, like I want GPUs or I want like really high end servers. Like those are typically where we run into that problem on AWS, and it does happen occasionally, more in the other regions than in the main big US ones and big Europe ones. But I've also seen it on GCP that they have made it not available when I needed it, as well as on Azure. So it's when that happens, you don't feel like it's very cloudy. All of a sudden you realize I'm back to capacity planning and not worried about these crazy things that you didn't have to worry about before.
Well, literally the cloud is somebody else's computer today. It's just not mine.
It's not mine today. That's all.
Nice.
All right. Let's move to Redmond with Azure. So if you are a Red Hat customer or a SUSE Enterprise Linux customer, there is a new preview available for you to bring your subscription to the Azure cloud with the Azure Hybrid Benefit and Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform on Azure. This is for all of those organizations trying to get off their on-premise legacy SUSE or Red Hat Enterprise models with your BYOS virtual machines. And then also the Ansible automation platform, which we previously talked about on the show, they've now expanded the availability. So if you were denied entry to the beta initially, you can now try again, and maybe you'll get in this time. So good luck to all of you out there trying to get Ansible to work on top of Azure. I don't envy any of you.
So I'm assuming that this service kind of replaces the similar service that AWS have, which is the licensing service, which kind of you sort of load in your subscriptions and then they handle tracking instances as they start up and go away again, so that you can report on your usage of those things for billing. And I'm pretty sure you can actually be billed directly by Azure for these licenses. Correct. Through this service as well.
So you can go to Azure, you can say I want a Red Hat Enterprise Linux box, and if you didn't bring your own subscription, which is different than bring your own license, we learned earlier today, then yes, you can just spin that up and you just pay an extra premium on your hour cost for that SUSE Linux or for that Red Hat license. But for a lot of organizations, they already have very large enterprise deals, or they've negotiated better pricing than they're getting from Azure, and so they want to bring their own subscription in those use cases. So it handles both of those scenarios, which is nice if you have some legacy Red Hat or you're in the middle of a migration and you have subscriptions for a few more years and you're like, I want to reuse the spending I already spent.
Yeah, we all missed the BYOA announcement today, which is to bring your own acronym. So we all had to go look that up.
BYOS. I was like, what? I had to go double click on that. Well, the Mark Rusinovich blog is back with another article in Advancing the Reliability of Azure. This one is co-authored by Gaurav Jagtiani. And this time they talk about Flash, as is known internally, a collection of efforts across Azure engineering that aims to evolve Azure's VM availability monitoring ecosystem into a centralized, holistic, and intelligible solution customers can rely on to meet their specific observability needs. They're excited to announce the completion of the project's first two milestones: the preview of VM availability data in Azure Resource Graph and the private preview of VM availability metric in Azure Monitor. Project Flash derives its name from their commitment to building robust and rapid ways to monitor virtual machine availability as comprehensively as possible, a key prerequisite for efficient application performance. And the features of Flash include consuming accurate and actionable data on VM availability disruptions, for example, VM reboots and restarts, application freezes due to network driver updates, and 30-second host OS updates, along with precise failure details, for example, platform versus user-initiated, reboot versus freeze, planned versus unplanned, etc. Analyzing and alerting on trends in VM availability for quick debugging and month-over-month reporting. Periodically monitor data at scale and build custom dashboards to stay updated on the latest availability states of all resources. Receive automated root cause analysis detailing impacted VMs, downtime caused, and duration, consequent fixes, and similar, all to enable targeted investigations and post-mortem analysis. Receive instantaneous notifications on critical changes in your VM, and dynamically tailor and automate platform recovery policies. Azure is reaching, of course, the first Project Flash milestone with the preview release of VM availability data to address the range of observability needs. And all I can think about when I read through this is really great, and I'm super glad you're doing this, and this really benefits Azure. And if our customer has to worry about all these things, I'm sort of concerned, because that's not very cloudy.
Every time he said Flash, I kept thinking,
Oh, I was, thank God, because I was like, oh, am I old? I don't know if anyone's going to get that reference.
No, we're totally showing our age now. Yeah, link to Flash Gordon and the Queen song in the show notes.
I was thinking of the MCU Flash a little bit because I've been watching, recent Marvel movies that have Flash. Or not. I think it's actually DCU has Flash.
You got the reverse.
DCU. I don't know. I'm not enough of a nerd. DC.
Yeah, DC.
So he was in the Batman movie, right? And the terrible Batman versus Superman. All those things. Well, let's move on to Oracle, who is joining the FinOps Foundation, which, it's a great organization to join. This apparently means that Oracle in the future hopes that you will be just as mad at your OCI bill as your AWS bill, and that's why they've joined it. The foundation, of course, is dedicated to advancing people who practice the discipline of cloud financial management through best practices, education, and standards. And there's a quote here from J.R. Stormont, who I've met, and we did a video together at reInvent. You can find at the FinOps group. We're thrilled to welcome Oracle as a member of the FinOps Foundation. The practitioner community greatly benefits as major cloud providers like Oracle align their product offerings to FinOps principles and standards to enable organizations to get the maximum value out of their cloud investments. So there you go. Oracle someday is going to, have big bills that you're going to be mad about, or they're going to sue you for the bill that you didn't, that they already should know what you spent. But it's Oracle. Got to keep those lawyers going.
Somebody at Oracle said, none of our customers are complaining how expensive it is to run here. So they're going to join the FinOps Foundation and raise their prices 50%.
Perfect. All right. Peter's not here for the lightning round, so we're just going to go round robin on this again, I think. So first, running faster motorsport simulations on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure.
Like every motorsport, or like.
This is just a
find this press release very suspect.
Yeah, this is just the them mapping how fast the people run away from their lawyers when they get the lawsuits.
Or maybe it's the truck that drives around that represents their regions.
AWS OpsWorks for configuration management now supports a new version of Chef Automate.
People still use Chef?
People still use OpsWorks?
I thought it died. so weird. Okay.
Just the community. Oh. Amazon Connect launches Amazon CloudWatch support for chat metrics.
Because every chat agent who works in support wants to be monitored by CloudWatch.
Yeah. That's what it is. This agent spent 59 minutes in the bathroom today.
To be fair, if I can get a metric for how many times I swear in a public chat room, though, I want that in CloudWatch.
I mean,
I can make it happen.
we could have made that. I was really thinking about it. It's kind of funny. So, like, if I use Connect for my call center to monitor my chat agents and my call agents, and then that gets logged to CloudWatch, and then CloudWatch has a trigger to Slack, it's just chat all the way around. So you can do all kinds of fun stuff.
You've got just a whole bunch of support talking to itself.
Yep. Amazon Neptune now supports up to 128 terabytes of storage per cluster because apparently GraphQL uses a lot of data.
128 terabytes, and I still don't know how to use it. Cool.
I got nothing. Honestly, the only thing I know about Neptune is that it's cold, blue, and windy.
Those are all true. How about the next story, though, that is with your name?
Absolutely. Amazon Neptune ML now supports custom models and Sparkle query language.
So you said it was blue, but does it sparkle blue, or is it just blue?
Mm-hmm.
Insert the magic name here.
Yeah. Magic. The twinkling glitter sound, right? Yeah.
It's so sparkly.
Yeah. If I didn't want to use, Neptune before, now that I can use Sparkle, something called Sparkle, I'm totally using that. That's amazing.
But you had to learn ML first to use it, so that's the fun part. So you really will learn the magic that you then get sparkles with.
That's the beauty of machine learning, is that the machines did all the learning. Why do I have to do so much learning?
It is an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much work to make the machines learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's like management all over, though.
It's a different type of management. People versus machines. You choose what you want to manage, and then choose your career wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Sorry, team. It's just a joke.
Yeah. AWS Organizations Console now lets users centrally manage alternate contacts on AWS accounts.
So we can spam twice as many people.
Call
with
somebody else, not me.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Amazon emailing people and accounts, I forgot in follow up that Amazon turned off EKS guard duty monitoring. So they went from we turned it on, we're going to bill you, to we turned it on, we're not going to bill you, to we just turned it off because we've completely backtracked on this because you guys were getting the pitchforks out. So just a small little side note there.
Please stop adding us. Yeah. Twitter was very angry.
Very angry.
Unrelated to AWS specifically, but I had to call Amazon, the retail side of Amazon yesterday. I received a package in the mail, but it was like it arrived in the mailbox, so it was something small. Didn't know what it was. It was addressed to me. Wasn't something I ordered, and I thought, wow, this is going to be hard to try and figure out what it was. And I was on. I started a chat. It was a bit clunky to try and figure out how to chat about something that I hadn't ordered from my own account, but I figured it out in the end. So within 8 minutes of chatting with an agent, I had found out who it came from, what it was, and they'd reordered it and rushed the delivery because when I told them it was for my son's birthday, it was a gift from somebody. They gave me next day shipping on it for free, even though the person who originally sent it didn't have Prime. So I was super impressed with their customer service focus, and I can see that it spreads across both orgs.
And I'm sure that success is now a CloudWatch metric and being used, hopefully, to give that nice support agent a raise. Awesome.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
So I guess I missed the part. So you received a package that I assume was damaged, which is why you needed to contact Amazon.
Empty.
Oh,
completely
empty.
It was,
okay.
Yeah, it was one of their blue and white envelopes, and there was no adhesive on the thing, and the label was printed literally where it would have been folded over anyway. And so clearly something had gone wrong. Somebody was having their 14th day of the notice period or something, and they didn't give a hoot that day. Clearly that would have, and the postman delivered it as well. Like, why would you deliver an empty envelope that's clearly open? But whatever, you get paid for what you do. That's fine.
AWS Vision's working really well. I see. That's great.
Yeah, it's not available in our region yet.
Got it.
So,
all right. Well, things coming up. One thing I want to mention today is SQL Server and Azure SQL Conference, April 5th through 7th. So if you're interested in that, but the rest of it you can see in the show notes. But nothing's close enough that I need to warn you all that it's imminent. But have a great rest of your week in the cloud, you guys.
Yeah, you too. Actually, I want to mention one thing really quick for the first time, just because I didn't put it in the list. That people should check out the AWS Twitch stream. There are often office hours sessions with a network team or with a compute team or various other teams, and they have an open forum for chat, and you can pick their brains. And they won't talk about things under NDA, obviously, in a public forum, but they'll give you pointers for things you can go back and talk to your account reps about, and lots of best practices and lots of pointers towards training materials and get started guides and stuff like that. It's been pretty interesting recently.
Yeah, it's kind of this unknown secret for people.
That'll save me the embarrassment of asking for a feature they delivered 6 months ago. I can do it anonymously online now. Excellent.
You just asked me because I remember almost all of I think they announced something about that, and then go find it in the show notes. The show notes have become like our own archive of like Amazon knowledge and Google and Azure. Like, yeah, I can tell you if they announced it and when because I have it in the notes. So just ask me. But no, the Twitch stream is really an underutilized asset that Amazon has for people that people who know about it, like Jonathan and myself and Ryan. I think we, I know I check it out at least once or twice a week. I'll pop it on to see what's going on, and I've stayed for hours a couple of times with a really interesting topic, or they're doing something I hadn't seen before. But for those of you who have never seen it, it is a really great resource that I recommend. They are not funnier than us, I don't think. They try, but they're not funnier than us.
They're not, and sometimes it's kind of like QVC for web services,
yeah. But not the.
It's normally managed very well.
It's more of the Mike Rowe version of QVC. If you've ever seen those YouTube videos, like it's not really great QVC, but it's like we're pretending to be QVC. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time regardless. I would recommend checking it out, and they have content almost all the time, so around the globe.
All right, have a good evening, guys.
You too.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.